part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Worldwide.
You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to Flash Week. I am the host of the Krypton Report, Tyler, and this is our official kickoff of what I'm calling Flash Week. That's right, we are fans of the Scarlet Speedster, and on this initial episode, we're going to talk a little bit of quick history and a little bit of comics. Now, we are not a Flash podcast, but we do love everything DC, so to celebrate this massive event of finally getting the Flash movie after almost 9 years of it being talked about, not to mention the history of the films that were not to be, and that would be the Justice League Mortal and the Wally West-based Ryan Reynolds film that never came to be. And we'll talk about that throughout this week as we get to things. But let's talk about The Flash. The Flash, or simply Flash, is the name of several superheroes appearing in the American comic books published by DC Comics. Created by writer Gardner Fox and artist Harry Lampert, the original Flash first appeared in Flash Comics #1, cover date January 1940, release month November 1939. Nicknamed the Scarlet Speedster, which is, the Barry Allen, and we'll get there. Also, we have the Crimson Comet. We'll get there too. All incarnations of the Flash possess super speed, which includes the ability to run, move, and think extremely fast. Don't we all wish we had that? Use superhuman reflexes and seemingly violate certain laws of physics. Thus far, at least 5 different characters, each of whom somehow gained the powers of the Speed Force, have assumed the mantle of the Flash in DC Comics history. Athlete Jay Garrick from 1940 to 51, and then returning in 61 to 2011, 2017 to present. Forensic scientist Barry Allen, 1956 to 1985, then 2008 to present. Barry's nephew Wally West, 1986 to 2011, 2016 to present. Barry's grandson Bart Allen, 2006 to 2007. Poor guy. Chinese-American hero Avery Ho, which is the Flash of China, 2017 to present. Each incarnation of the Flash has been a key member of at least one of DC's premier teams, the Justice Society of America, the Justice League, and Teen Titans. There's also been Flash sidekicks such as Kid Flash, Impulse, and then the only Kid Flash do not assume any kind of title of the Flash as of now is Wallace, aka Ace West. Now, going into the Golden Age, the Flash first appeared in Flash Comics #1, January 1940, from All American Publications, one of the 3 companies that would eventually merge to form DC Comics. Like I said, created by writer Gardner Fox and artist Harry Lampert, this Flash was Jay Garrick, a college student who gained his speed through the inhalation of hard water vapors. Let that sink in because that makes no sense. Hard water. Is that ice? But that was the backstory. When reintroduced in the 1960s, Garrick's origin was modified slightly, gaining his powers through exposure to heavy water. Once again, that doesn't make sense. Water, speed, I don't know. The Silver Age, 1956, DC Comics successfully revived superheroes, ushering in what would become known as the Silver Age of comic books. Rather than bringing back the same Golden Age heroes, DC rethought them as new characters for the modern age. The Flash was the first revival in the Tryout comic book Showcase #4, October of 1956. This new Flash was Barry Allen, a police scientist who gained super speed when bathed by chemicals after a shelf of them was struck by lightning. He adopted the name the Scarlet Speedster after reading a comic book featuring the Golden Age Flash. After several more appearances in Showcase, Allen's character was given his own title, The Flash. The first issue, which was number 105, resuming where the Flash comics had left off. Barry Allen and the New Flash were created by writers Robert Kanigher and John Broome, and cartoonist Carmine Infantino. And Barry's the biggest, most recognized one that we discuss. The Modern Age. The third Flash was Wally West, introduced in the Flash number 110, December of 59, as Kid Flash. West was Alan's nephew by marriage and gained Flash's power through the accident identical to Alan's. Adopting the identity of Kid Flash, he maintained membership in Teen Titans for years, following Alan's death. West adopted the Flash's identity in Crisis on Infinite Earths number 12 and was given his own series beginning in The Flash Volume 2, number 1 in 87. Many issues began with this catchphrase, "My name is Wally West, and I'm the fastest man alive." Now, the thing about Wally West is, and you'll hear this probably throughout this podcast series, is Wally really became the cemented staple so much of what the Flash is, and then retroactively Barry Allen took on traits, such as that statement, and the biggest one being the Speed Force. And when you read old Flash comics, and when we talk about Flashes prior to Mark Waid's writing of Wally West, there is no Speed Force. And all that really changes when Jeff Johns brought Barry back in 2008 with Rebirth, and it's all Speed Force related. So just something to keep in mind, much like the way Tim Drake has become like the ideal Robin, but yet every version of Robin now has cherry-picked from Tim, to where all of his originality has been lost and given pretty much to Dick Grayson. Grab a quick drink. Let's get back at it. Bartholomew Henry Allen II, a.k.a. Bart, the grandson of Barry Allen and his wife Iris. Bart suffered from accelerated aging, and as a result was raised in a virtual reality machine until Iris took him back in time to get help from the current Flash, Wally West. With Wally West's help, Bart's aging slowed, and he took the mantle name of Impulse. He was shot in the knee by Deathstroke. Bart changed both his attitude and his costume, taking the mantle of Kid Flash during the events of Infinite Crisis. The Speed Force vanished, taking with it all speedsters save Jay Garrick. Bart returned 4 years older and for a year claimed that he was depowered from the event. However, the Speed Force had not disappeared completely, but had been absorbed into Bart's body. Essentially, he now contained all of the Speed Force. Bart's costume as the Flash was a clone of his grandfather, similarly stylized like Wally West. Not long after taking the mantle of the Flash, Bart was killed by the Rogues in the 13th and final issue of the Flash, Fastest Man Alive. Each Flash has had a variation to the costume to tell them apart. The biggest being that Wally had like a V-cut belt. He has, the nose is a little higher on his suit, the way it covers his face. He has the more lenses in his eyes. Barry has open eyes. Barry has a circular belt. And Wally had like little wings on his boots, if I remember right. And Barry did not. Or maybe I have those backwards. Like I said, I am not the most aficionado, but that's just the biggest ones that kind of visually jump out at you. And then sometimes you'll see Wally's lightning bolt only has like one like dip in it, and Barry's had two. And a lot of times Wally was colored a little darker. But as Bryan and I have discussed, eventually, once Barry returns and Wally and all that, they start just kind of passing back and forth certain traits artists cherry pick from, and it gets much harder to discern who is the Flash based on their costume, because they kind of just share traits. And we'll later see in New 52 and in the DCU latter part of New 52 when Barry's costume was completely changed to a costume I actually really like. It was modeled a little bit more off the TV series at the time. It's very difficult to tell who is actually the Flash. So just a heads up on that if you're looking at some Flash artwork. But the circle belt is a big giveaway for older comics. Each character has appeared in different animated series, most notably Wally West on the Justice League animated series and Justice League Unlimited. Young Justice gave us Barry as the Flash, Wally as Kid Flash, and Bart as Impulse, which was awesome. First 2 seasons of Young Justice, amazing. If you don't cry at the end of season 2, you have no heart. That's all I'm going to say. In television, in 1979, The Flash appeared in the live-action Legends of the Superheroes special. In 1990, there was the TV series, which is the CBS starring John Wesley Shipp. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. There was the 1997 unaired Justice League of America pilot / made-for-TV movie. Smallville gave us the then Impulse, Bart Allen, on live action. And then, as mentioned, there was going to be the 2007 Justice League Mortal film, and which we would have gotten a Barry Allen and a Wally West. In 2014, we announced The Flash was going to be made and released in 2018 as the 6th installment of the DC then titled Extended Universe, starring Ezra Miller. So yes, that is what we have as far as The Flash in an overview. And now we're going to kind of dip into a little bit more and talk about comics. And welcome to Flash Week. This time, I am here with the one, the only, the comics chronology reader mastermind himself, the man-child of steel, Mr. Bryan Peters. What's up, man?
Hey, Tyler. Happy to be here, man. Chronological crusader.
I like it.
I don't know.
If Bryan was a superhero, what would his name be? The Chronological Crusader. I go chronologically. But no, we're just kind of chatting comics. You know, we're talking about The Flash.
One of the greatest superheroes of our time.
Yeah, I mean, he is.
Time.
You know, we're just kind of opening and we're having an open kind of general. There's so many years. There's 80-some years of comic history in The Flash. And we're just kind of like having an open comic discussion on, you know, the Scarlet Speedster.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, excuse me, still getting over this.
You want to start with Jay?
You know, I don't know that much about Jay. I'll be honest, I've never been someone who's like, Jay Garrick.
I love Jay Garrick.
I'm like, Jay's cool.
I love Jay Garrick. Let me break down Jay Garrick for you.
Break it down.
So, I'll do my best. So, I can't remember who created Jay Garrick, thus creating The Flash initially. But Jay Garrick, so as you know, all the stories before the iconic Flash issue, I believe it's Flash.
It's showcase. It's
showcase.
You mean
something.
showcase when he
appeared something.
When he premiered, yeah.
Yes, but like so Jay Garrick was he was a scientist. He was a scientist, and he was working with water molecules.
Yeah.
And chemicals went on him, and
hard water. Explain to me how hard water gave him super speed.
I don't know, man.
That's just one of
the 40s. Like
he just kind of like ice.
It never really made sense to me. But I remember he was like a football star. He was also on the football team, and he was in college. Yeah, he was in college.
He's all-American.
He was a football guy. He liked this chick named Joan. I never really paid him any mind. And all of a sudden he became the Flash, and Joan's kind of like someone interested. And Jay just outright uses his super speed in the football game.
That's
like outright there.
That's a ethical dilemma.
And even on DC Universe, you can't read many of those all-star comics of the Flash. Like you can't really find much of Jay. And then Jay, of course, becomes one of the main members of the JLA that doesn't really have a purpose yet until the first ever crossover in comics history. I could be wrong there. But I don't think I am. But the first ever crossover that ever happened was the Flash of Two Worlds. And we see the iconic first comic of Jay running alongside Barry.
Help me, Flash.
So who the heck's Barry?
And what's crazy, though, is this was Jay exists. So technically, I think in most comics, Jay was always Golden Age kind of put on Earth 2.
Yeah.
And
it was established in that comic, Jay's Earth 2.
And Barry used to read comics featuring the Flash, which was Jay. So it's kind of like Earth 1's comic characters were like alive on Earth 2. So that's kind of why Barry...
Which is something I love about Superboy Prime.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other talk.
Which we will do later this year. I think we're doing it in July. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sweet. I love Superboy Prime. So yeah, Barry gets the idea for the name from reading comics of Jay.
So I just think that's always an interesting concept. So Barry was 1964. Sound right?
I thought it was 62. But I'm wrong. 64 sounds about right.
It's right in there when they reinvigorate Green Lantern and the Flash. And was it Julie Schwartz? At the time was a publisher, an editor, and
so when Marvel comes out Marvel comes out in 62 with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, X-Men,
the Marvel
banger after banger, the whole Marvel universe. DC was like, maybe we should change these characters up. So Alan Scott becomes he's tossed aside, and they get Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and then you get Barry Allen Flash.
And that's pretty much the Flash that people recognize and think of. Yeah. Even if they don't realize it, they know the Flash. And I feel like with the Flash, okay, one of the things that happens with that character is similar to what's happened with Robin, but I don't think to the extent where, you have Wally West, who later becomes the Flash, and there's a lot of things that happen with Wally. And for most of us growing up, Wally was our Flash. I mean, but Barry was always the one that was used in other media until like the Justice, the Bruce Timm Justice League cartoons. But there was so much that when Barry came back, and then even in like the Grant Gustin show, that was kind of connected to Wally, but they just kind of reintributed it back to Barry because it just became so synonymous with the character. Or characters, like that being speedsters, period. Like later, when Jay came more prominent in different things, and then when Bart, they all had the Speed Force, and speedsters all had the Speed Force, which originated with Wally. Feels like, I recently just reread Rebirth, Jeff Johns' Rebirth, where Barry comes back, and he comes back, and it was kind of interesting because you and I had talked, just about the Speed Force and stuff. So, yeah. But going back to when Barry emerged in the comics, there was no Speed Force. No mention of it. So he just moved. Yet. He just moved quickly. He was fast.
So what's interesting about so the thing about Barry is Barry was established in the comics as kind of notoriously late. Mm-hmm. He was always late for things. Barry was a CSI guy. Worked in Central City in the labs, and it's also established in Flash of Two Worlds that there's like this barrier that's separating Central and Keystone. Mm. And there's like this bridge that goes nowhere. And then that other part is in Earth 2. So you'll see it come up in comics sometimes. They'll be like, what's this bridge go to? Or whatever. So, anywho, Barry is struck by lightning, doused with chemicals on the same night he's supposed to have a date with Iris West. And he is, of course, late for that. Ends up in the hospital, not too long. And then he has Flash powers. He outrang things left and right. And he creates, the red suits that can absorb his energy. And there's not really a whole lot to it. Most of this, from the 60s to the 80s, Flash is very educational comic, if you will, because he calls them flashbacks.
Which is awesome because you gotta love the F and alliterations with the
Absolutely.
F's. Flashbacks.
And you get a lot of physics talk sometimes by people just reserving the Flash in the comic, like the things he does. But what I really appreciate about the Silver Age, it's very science fiction. It's completely science fiction based. But Barry starts growing this amazing rogues gallery, man. Like, the rogues gallery can only be rivaled by Batman himself. Batman has his Joker, Two-Face, Clayface, Riddler, your mind, Scarecrow. Like, your mind kind of goes black. But with the Flash, man, you got it. Well, Reverse Flash pen wasn't prominent yet, but you got Captain Cold, Mirror Master, Heatwave, Captain Boomerang, the Top, the Trickster. You have all these villains with just different abilities and different things they bring to the table, and it's just so fun. Like, they all bring different fun things to it. Like, the 60s villains weren't murdering things left and right. And that's what I was kind of saying to you. Like, that's one thing I like about the Silver Age, is, like, it's not so dark.
Well, so
they were just robbing stuff.
What's interesting, What's interesting is you talk about we're skipping ahead just a moment, but, like, Barry dies in 85, in Crisis.
Yep.
But...
Hold off.
Oh, no, wait.
Because a very important story happens.
No, screw the story, but you brought up a point. You talked about everyone murdering left and right. That's what happens in the 80s, into 90s comics.
I was getting there.
And that's what I'm saying. Like,
chronological, man.
Yeah, but you can't hint at something and then hold it out and wait. If you're going to bring up a point, you got to follow it through. Because the Flash never got dark.
Yes, it did.
Not with Barry.
Yes, it did.
With what?
Oh, yeah, it did.
With what?
I'm getting there.
Then get there.
Dude, I'm talking about the 60s and the 70s.
Then talk.
And then the 80s is where it gets dark.
Okay, what do we get in the 80s?
So when you get the Bronze Age, with the death of Gwen Stacy is really what ushered in the Bronze Age. Stories got a little bit more real. Gwen Stacy, the death of Gwen Stacy is what ushers in.
I never really thought about that, but that makes sense.
Yep. That's what it would be, the cementing of the Bronze Age, where things got a little bit darker, things got a little bit more real and personal.
Makes sense.
So before Crisis is like one of the most iconic Barry stories of all time, is the trial of the Flash. So before then, the Reverse Flash would kind of rob things left and right. He just wanted to rob things. He just wanted to ruin it. But in that story, the Reverse Flash tries to get Iris to fall in love with him.
For some reason, I was thinking.
Well, this is kind of pre-trial. The trial is a result of this story.
For some reason, I was thinking like this story happened later. But you're right. Yeah, continue.
It happens right before Barry goes to Crisis. So, and this story is weird, man. It gets weird. So Reverse Flash tries to win the love of Iris. Doesn't work.
He can have TV Iris. That's cool.
So, what's that?
He can have TV Iris.
No, absolutely not. It would have worked with TV Iris. So, the Reverse Flash decides he's going to kill Iris. And this is where you really start the story of Reverse Flash wanting to ruin Barry's life. So he tries to kill Iris, and Barry snaps his neck.
Yeah.
Barry kills him. Barry comes to a point where, like, there's no way that I'm going to stop this guy. See, Barry can't go in time yet.
So what you're saying is Man of Steel just ripped off the Flash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat. But like Barry, so up until this point in comics, Barry can't travel through time. If he does travel in time, like he will end up somewhere he doesn't know, and that's where the cosmic treadmill come into effect. So he built a cosmic treadmill. Now Wally was just Kid Flash this time. So we kind of skipped over Wally's origin, but
we'll back up.
We'll back up when we get to Wally. But Trial of the Flash, dude. So what do you do when a hero that gives you so much hope kills somebody? They put him on trial. Now this is where stuff gets really, really, really weird. So because Iris during that time disappears, like he kills Iris, but kind of doesn't. Iris goes to the future.
Mm.
It's really weird, man. This is where it gets really weird. Iris goes to the future, and during this trial storyline, there's a witness that is helping the Flash, and it's some dude. It's revealed near the end of the story that Iris's consciousness is in this dude, helping Barry get exonerated of the charges. It's a weird story, man. I recommend you read what happened, like the Reverse Flash story of him, like kind of killing Iris and stuff, and Barry snapping. Read that.
Okay.
The trial is kind of like it's the final Flash story before Crisis.
Okay.
So, in result of that story of Flash going through trial, he goes to the future and lives with Iris for a few years. That's the part where they have their children. So that's where they go to the future. They have their children. They have a son, and then they have their grandchildren, and then that's where Bart comes out, and Exus, all that stuff. Or XS, sorry. And that's where the legacy goes from when Barry travels to the future.
Okay.
Leading up to Crisis, Barry comes. It's like the nightmare scene in Batman vs Superman. Barry comes back to the past, and Batman, for example, Batman sees Barry, like you disappeared. Like, what's going on? He sees Barry dying in front of his eyes. What's wrong? So I was actually wrong about something. So the Reverse Flash did kill Iris.
Okay.
And Barry, and then like a few issues later, maybe within like a year, Barry starts dating someone new and goes to marry her. And then at the wedding, the Reverse Flash returns. He tries to kill his new wife, and Barry snaps his neck.
What was his new wife's name?
I can't remember.
It doesn't matter.
I can't see it. I don't see what the heck her name was.
Because nobody cared.
No one cares. It just says another woman. But then it's also revealed in the comics. The 80s were really messed up, dude, for the Flash, at least. So it's revealed that Iris was actually born in the future. Like kind of like Barry, like Bart's time.
That makes sense.
And then she was sent back to the past and adopted.
Oh, okay. That totally makes sense. That's like some. Even James Cameron can't make this up.
Right. But they send her consciousness back into that drawer. And it's a very weird story.
Do you ever feel like comics, like when we talk about like where they take a comic and adapt it into a film, like directly, like some of these animated movies, and you like walk away like, man, the animated movie was so good. Do you ever think that in comics they just overly complicate things just because like it's a comic? Let's make it really crazy and super sciencey. And you're like, how about you just tell a cohesive story that I can follow and understand, and don't have to have a PhD in quantum physics to explain it?
Well, I think that the MCU simplifies things as much as possible.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a difference.
Whereas Zack Snyder's like, I'm going to make you think.
Well, I mean, there's make you think, but then there's like, just overcomplicating storylines, and then coming in and like, we're just going to take this and make this the storyline. We're going to make this more simplistic, And you're like, oh, okay. Okay, so we're in the 80s.
All right, so Crisis. So Barry goes to the future for a few weeks of our time. She's only gone like a few weeks, and then the Anti-Monitor brings him back to 1985 because he's the only one that can travel the multiverse. So that's why the Anti-Monitor or the Monitor brings him back. And Crisis. So, do you feel that that killing Barry was a good choice? Like,
yes.
So
I
this
say
guy
yes.
Been around for 20.
I was doing
20-something years.
I was
that
doing
he was around, and then they decided to kill him.
21 years roughly, because I did from 64 to 85.
64 to 85, like 21 years.
And then Wally. Then I did Wally 85 to 2008. It's 23 years.
Well, 2011.
I did 2008 because that's when Barry returns.
But Wally's still there.
But yeah, that was my next point. But Barry wasn't. So you have 23 years of no Barry Allen.
Oh, for how many times Barry? Yeah, so you have 21 years on, 20. Yeah.
And then 23 years with no Barry Allen.
Off.
I don't count Elseworlds Tales, but I'm talking like main continuity.
No death has ever lasted that long.
I know.
Like superhero wise.
And that's part of, I think, why the return of Barry Allen was such a big deal. But we'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah. So Crisis.
Because you were asking, was it
the death of Barry Allen?
I think it was needed because you and I both talked. We get tired of comics not feeling like it has stakes. Because
let's reiterate, live action adaptation.
No, we talk about that all the time. I mean, that's
like there's no stakes.
But the thing about when I read a story, I feel like because they're always resetting back to the status quo. They haven't had the guts to make any big changes and stick with it.
Except Uncle Ben.
Yeah, Uncle Ben. If they ever try not to that, but whatever.
So I looked this up. I did look this up. So before, so until the Winter Soldier story, Bucky was the longest death ever in comics.
Yep.
Until they brought him back for Winter Soldier.
It's like
Barry was number 2.
It's like right now, what I'm thinking is, it's only been a couple of years, maybe 2, since they killed Alfred in main Batman continuity.
Oh, I thought it was like 4 years.
It hasn't been that long.
See, Bane was what, 2018?
I thought that was okay. We'll have to look it up.
Oh, no, yeah.
We'll say 2 to 4
years.
years.
I haven't got there in my chronological.
We'll just say 2 to 4.
I just know Alfred dies.
We'll say 2 to 4 years. Okay.
Sure.
That is a nice chunk of time, but at the same time, comics move. Like you're always in. There's always so much comics that sometimes you don't feel like it's been that long, even though it has been 2 to 4 years. But I just feel like for the most part, they don't kill characters off. Like I thought, if you read like in Dark Crisis, I thought they were going to kill Beast Boy, and I was mad. But at the same time, I'm like, I respected it because
it was all sudden. Because Deathstroke just goes. Psh. That's the only issue I read, so that's how I know that.
But you know what I'm saying? So at this point in time, we hadn't gotten to the part where reboot.
Yeah, no.
Soft reboot.
Yep.
Hard reboot.
Nope. Crisis was revolutionary.
So it was a huge deal. So I think having 2 pretty major characters, one being Barry, the majorist, it's a word, and Supergirl being,
That's
pretty...
funny, major.
I know. And Supergirl being another large character dying.
Yeah.
Without,
And then now they're Wonder Woman. The Earth, whatever. Wonder Woman,
but they were... but even when they rebooted, you know what I'm saying? Like, when they rebooted and came back and all that, there still wasn't Barry.
Yeah.
And Supergirl had been...
There was just very heavily the memory of Barry.
Yeah, which is very interesting. So when you break it down how you have, this John Byrne Superman reboot, kind of, and then you catch up, continuity. But then you have Wally picking up the mantle.
Yeah, that's a damn good point.
But remembers
Barry. If you're
Barry.
going to redo Superman...
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It's like they rebooted hard, but at the same time... No. But they didn't reboot as hard as you really think when you break it down.
Good job.
So, alright. So we're in 1985.
So Barry dies by trying to stop the antimatter cannon. So basically what's going on is DC Comics through the years acquired so many different properties. They had Fawcett Comics. I think they had Wildstorm at this time. Vertigo probably wasn't a thing yet. I apologize for my chronological thinking. I'm probably all over the place. They had Vertigo. Yeah, they had Vertigo with Constantine because part of Crisis is the Saga Swamp Thing intertwines with Crisis. They had Fawcett Comics. They had
Charlton.
Did they own Wildstorm?
They own Charlton. Well, Wildstorm came later. Because that was the one they bought when Jim Lee came back to DC.
And then they had
They had Charlton at that time. But were they there? Like Blue Beetle? Captain Atom? Yeah. Peacemaker. Those are all Charlton characters.
There's all these different comic stuff. So they decided to do Crisis and bring it all to one continuity, one reboot, one thing. And the Anti-Monitor was a character that was just wanted to destroy all these different universes. Hence the story to bring them together. George Perez, Mark Wolfman, holy crap,
amazing
story. Bring them all together, and in that, the Anti-Monitor has this cannon that's kind of destroying all the different Earths, and Barry decides to run as fast as he can, and basically become almost antimatter himself, and destroy this cannon with his speed. And the iconic scene of him just fading away, his skin and his costume fade away into bone, and he just goes to nothingness. And Barry's gone. All that's left is his costume. And the iconic shot of Wally holding that costume.
Now, you said costume. Let's talk for a moment about Barry Allen comic book Flash costume.
Yes, sir.
Because you and I had this conversation. You were like, how do you tell if it's Barry or if it's Wally? First thing I told you was the circle belt.
After New 52, they just...
Hold on, chronology.
Yeah.
Chronology.
My apologies.
So Barry is generally done with the gold boots.
Gold boots. Yes, sir.
Wings on the boots.
Yep, sir.
A yellow circular lightning belt.
Circular, yes.
And then he has like 2 dips in his lightning bolt.
Yeah, 2 dips, and it's flat. It's a flat symbol. It's just a white circle, and then the lightning bolt in the middle.
And then wider open eyes.
Yes.
Is there anything I'm missing?
Blue eyes.
Well, yeah, his eyes are naturally blue. Supposed to be.
Tends to smile more.
But I mean costume like wise. Because his wrists are circular too.
Her bracelet.
Okay.
And it's a lighter red.
Yes.
It's a brighter red, if you will.
So we say that. We'll get into it, but Wally's, in contrast, is a little darker red.
Darker red.
He has more of a V cut
Point
lightning
to his,
belt.
His Speed Force, if you will.
Mm-hmm. The circles on like his wrist are a little bit more angled.
Yes. Angled lightnings.
And then you have more covered, like past his nose, but like he usually has his eyes covered. They're usually like either white or something kind of.
Yeah, usually the eyes are covered, and he has more of a cowl.
Yes,
if you will. He's traditionally drawn with bigger gold wings on his helmet or his cowl. They tend to be bigger than Barry's. And his flash symbol is a 3-layer. It's more 3D.
Yes.
And he has a gold circle around the white background.
And it's just one dip in the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And we say that because it's very important to keep the 2 flashes.
And green eyes. If you see his eyes,
Yes.
they're green.
It's hard to keep them, But then, like Bryan alluded to, and we talked about this a little bit, when you get to like New 52 and beyond, they just throw all that out.
They don't care.
And even in like, I will say Justice League the Animated Series kept Wally as Wally
Oh, absolutely.
in his suit, but then other
One of
versions,
the best versions of Wally.
in other versions in the animated series, there's little things they tweak and change here and there, and like even just to point out how sometimes Flash gets amalgamized. Let's just throw this back out there: the John Wesley ship is more of a Wally suit,
Yeah.
but it's Barry.
Yeah. And not to mention they gave John Wesley the eating thing. That's a staple of Wally West.
Now, hold that thought, because that is one of those things that's kind of, once again, retroactively gone back and kind of like is now all speedsters, And so now, Bryan, my buddy Bryan here, loves Wally West.
I love Wally West.
So Bryan, real quick, just give us a quick kind of a comics history of Wally, who starts out as Kid Flash.
So about year 2 of Barry being the Flash, his relationship with Iris is much stronger. They might be engaged at that time. I'm trying to remember.
I was rereading Mark Waid's, and I think so, because I've been reading a lot of Flash, and
Mark Waid's is.
And I think they work
So
as it's when Wally's like retelling his history in the first couple of issues.
So we'll get there. So so Wally West is the nephew of Iris. He has red hair, green eyes. He's probably about 10 at this time, and he just loves his Aunt Iris. His parents suck. They're from a small town in Nebraska, Blue Valley, Nebraska. You might have heard of it.
Is it Blue Valley? Isn't that where Stargirl's from?
Why, Tyler, it is. So Wally's parents really suck. They don't care about him. They really ignored him. They fight all the time. So Wally idolizes the Flash. The Flash is his biggest hero. Ring a bell? Barry's biggest hero was the Flash and Jay Garrick. So now we're in the third generation here, and Wally's biggest hero is Barry Allen Flash, though he doesn't know he's Barry yet. So he goes to visit Iris, because not only is his Aunt Iris and she's awesome, but that's where the Flash lives. So Wally runs into Barry, and Wally thinks Barry is boring as heck. He thinks he's one of the most boring people in the world. But Barry says to him, "Hey, I can introduce you to the Flash. Why not?" He wants to impress the kid.
Of course.
Wally stays there for a summer. So, ironically, when Barry introduces him to the Flash, or as himself, I think he runs out of one door and then changes costume and then opens the door and then boom, it's the Flash. And Wally's so surprised to see the Flash, he doesn't realize, well, where the heck did that Barry go?
He don't care about
the door.
At that time, he don't really care about Barry.
He don't care. But while the Flash is telling him how he became the Flash, and in that same lab, Wally gets hit with lightning and chemicals, the same exact way that Barry does, almost still 2 years to the day. He gets doused it. And Barry's like, "Hey, what the heck are we going to do here? Okay, here's one of my old costumes that somehow is going to fit you, even though you're 10 years old and I'm 25. Whatever, it'll work. And you are now Kid Flash." And Wally becomes Kid Flash. His original costume is just like an old Barry costume.
Yeah.
He eventually helps form the Teen Titans, which is the kid group, like DC's X-Men, if you will. the teen group with
sidekicks.
With Robin, with Tim Drake Robin, with Dick Grayson Robin, who becomes Wally's best friend in the whole world. And I love Dick Grayson, so I'm a big Titans guy.
Right.
I love Dick Grayson.
I mean, who doesn't? Dick Grayson is one of the greatest characters that DC Comics has ever created.
Of all time. Characters of all time, period.
Yeah, I would.
But the greatest DC character is, it's Dick Grayson. It really is.
And you know what sucks is Dan DiDio hated Dick Grayson / Nightwing. That's why he kept trying to kill him.
Now that I do think that Nightwing should have died in Infinite Crisis.
Ooh.
But that's a whole different story.
Well, we're going to save that for our Superboy Prime conversation.
Yes, Nightwing should have died. What the heck were we talking about? Wally West, my man. So he helps form the Teen Titans, and his costume changes, which to me, historically, is very interesting, because he chooses yellow as his costume, with a yellow-red, which is the same colors as the Reverse Flash.
In some ways, yeah.
And to me personally, and I'm not past New 52 Rebirth and all that stuff, but what would have been a very interesting story to me would have been that, something with the Kid Flash colors being like that and the Reverse Flash. I think there's a story there that you could do.
Well, I mean, especially...
You really could.
I mean, especially when you... Especially like with Bart.
Yeah.
Because Bart's a Thawne and an Allen.
Yes.
So... That's just like...
I love Bart as Kid Flash. I love him.
I love him as Kid Flash, and I will say this. I do not like Bart or the New 52 Bart. Do not like it at all.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, keep telling us about Wally.
Alright, so Wally's costume becomes yellow. Yellow, red boots. He has these gloves that are red gloves, and he lets his hair flow. He lets his red hair flow, which tends to be a kind of a staple for Wally, having his red hair flow. It's really my favorite costume, Flash-related costume. I love it. So Wally grows up under Barry's, leadership. He grows up with Dick and the Teen Titans, and he becomes his own. As Dick transfers to Nightwing around the same time, Wally, was getting lost too. There is a story right before Crisis where Wally actually loses his powers. He starts losing his powers, and he loses his speed. And around the time when Barry dies, Wally doesn't have that speed. He barely has any speed at all. He can go about the speed of sound at that time.
Which is hilarious because, speed of sound.
I know, right?
We're like, that's ridiculously fast. But they're like, speed of sound? That's nothing.
That's nothing. But, so when Wally's holding Barry's costume after Barry dies, Wally decides to take up that mantle in respect for his uncle and become the third Flash. And he wears Barry's costume for quite some time. Now, from 85 to about 90, I think 92, so around 91, 92, when Wade takes over.
I'm about to say, sounds about right. Early 90s.
The early Wally Flash comics are really weird. They're never referenced at all. Anything that happens to him is not referenced at all. Wally goes to dark place. I think he ends up homeless. He ends up poor. His first story is actually he gets hired by a hospital to deliver a heart across the United States. So if you ever see that story where Flash can deliver a heart, I think it was like a Justice League episode.
It was Young Justice.
Yeah,
it's one of the best Young Justice where, and this time Wally's Kid Flash, but it's a great story.
Yeah, that was his first ever Flash story in Flash 1 in 1985, and he runs into Vandal Savage. And that's the first story. But around the 90s, a man we know pretty well named Mark Waid takes over for Wally.
Mark frickin' Wade.
Mark motherfucking Wade.
Yeah.
You know, and Wally's Flash means a lot to me because it was the first comic I ever got for myself. The first comic I ever bought for myself was ironically a Flash 123, which didn't have the significance of the old Flash 123s of the Flash Two Worlds or the Reverse Flash. I don't know what the 123 means so much to Flash.
Maybe because it's like you're
123
or like you're about to run or something. 1, 2, 3. Like
this is iconic cover of Wally West Flash standing in front of like a Hollywood sign. It's right when he moves to like Los Angeles during that time, and it says Flash, slowest man on Earth. It's a very It's just that was my first comic I read.
That's awesome.
So, Wade kind of like retcons a little bit about Wally.
Because Wade's an intelligent man.
And you read Born to Run, right?
Yeah.
So, Born to Run, what did you think?
Well, what I was reading, I don't think I finished it all because
well, you really should.
I'm working on it. It's just I've been reading a lot. Because I was reading the beginning where Wally retcon or like tells his story over, and that's when I started like. So you have Ira West, who had Iris, Randolph, and then was another brother, right?
It might have been Rudolph.
Okay.
I think Wally's middle name is Rudolph.
Yeah. So Iris, Rudolph, and then wasn't there another one? Another brother?
Maybe, but
maybe not.
Recall.
And then, so maybe there's not.
Yeah.
So
Wally is
Rudolph's son.
Iris's brother's son.
Yep. And they were talking about how like they just weren't, they really in that story hammered home the importance of Aunt Iris and how his dad was just not really a neglectful father, but like an absent father of just always being busy and not really being interested in his son. Like he loved his son in a way, but like not the way that Wally needed. And you really saw that growth, and that Wally found that inspiration through Barry, who became his uncle and everything. So he was his hero on two fronts. Not only just because he was his hero as a superhero, but he was his hero as, the person Barry.
Because Wally didn't know that Barry was the Flash until much later.
Yeah.
Like he was Kid Flash, but he didn't know that Barry was the Flash.
They even talked about where he had to take Wally because his powers were like cutting out and stopping, and they were like, "You can't use your speed, or you won't have it." And they took him to Ira, and Wally's reminiscing as a grown-up with Ira at the time, and he even says to him, "You met me as Kid Flash before, and you even know it was me." And so it was an interesting story.
I would have liked Ira to be a character in the Flash. I would have liked that. I really would have. There's a Wally West show movie that's just needs to happen someday.
Yeah, because it's an interesting story to move past. Like if you pick up where you're taking over for someone and you're kind of inheriting this mantle, because we always we see the origin film, but we never really get a chance to do the handing down and what it means in a story where you're taking the mantle of something and you're redefining it as you and yourself, but yet honoring who came before you. So
which is why that's why the 90s were so big for that.
Totally.
90s was an uncharted territory, man. Like it was a whole new area. You had Hal Jordan die, you had Superman die. You had Batman's back break. This is the first time in comics and you had Wonder Woman go away too.
That's when she killed Max Lord.
No, that was much later.
I thought that was in the 90s.
No, that was
early 2000s. You're right. That was during.
That was Infinite Crisis.
Yep.
Around that time, I think she was. I think in the 90s. No, they didn't kill her then. They might have killed her. There was a time where her mom was Wonder Woman for a while. But anywho, all your major Justice Leaguers or out. Like Aquaman was gone too again. During that time, but like this passing the torch to Wally, that's something that always hangs over Wally's head. Mm-hmm. Am I doing this right? Am I doing it the way Barry would do it? And it's not. And like what Mark writes is this years journey of Wally finding out what he's made of and who he is as a hero. Mm. And like reading this as an adult, like it's just it made me love Wally even more. It made me appreciate who Wally was. So when Wally takes that mantle, like a big criticism of Kyle Rayner Green Lantern is a criticism that Wally gets.
Yeah,
is that when Kyle took over, all those Hal Jordan villains, they were gone. Like Kyle never dealt with Sinestro. Like he didn't deal with like Star Sapphire. He didn't deal with Black Hand. He didn't deal with anyone. Like Kyle started getting his own villains, and he had like Sonar or whatever.
Sounds menacing.
But Kyle, like when Ron Mars kind of stopped writing, that's where it kind of like went on the wayside. But for Wally, it was a new dynamic for the Flash because he didn't really have a rogues gallery. Like Wally gets, Girder and like Magenta, and he gets like, Pied Piper becomes an ally now, but he doesn't have a Captain Cold. He doesn't have like a Captain Boomerang. He doesn't have a Heat Wave, Mirror Master. He doesn't have any of those. Like he gets an occasional. I think he sees like. They made so many new villains for Wally, which gets really interesting. And one of those new villains, so as Wally is building up, Wade introduces the Speed Force. Mm-hmm. And that's where things get interesting.
And that's where, like I said, like that's one of those things that is a unique to Wally in the comics that then's retconned back to Barry. And all speedsters, just like you were talking about the Edie.
Barry's the source. Barry is the Speed Force.
Like when Barry died, he went into the Speed Force, and that's how he comes back in Rebirth, and like you were saying about the whole needing to eat thing, like details that make sense to build character that were introduced during Wally's run that were later just because of a certain writer who Bryan and I are going to have a conversation in an episode in the future about the importance or not. What's the word? I don't know.
You're talking about Jeff Johns, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm talking about Jeff Johns. Yeah. We're going to talk about a whole thing about Jeff Johns.
I don't have a full opinion yet.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's in the future somewhere.
Here, I'll give you a little teaser trailer. I think for Green Lantern, what Jeff did for Green Lantern
is remarkable.
It's unbelievable. Blackest Night is, in my opinion, thus far in my chronological reading, which I just started New 52, is without a doubt the greatest DC crossover there is. Like, it was 40-something years in the making. Because it really starts with Hal Jordan and Showcase whatever as a Green Lantern. Like that first meeting, getting that ring, it built from there, and even from Barry with it.
Yeah,
sorry, it's just crazy. But also, what Wade did is he built the Flash family. So around this time, Jay Garrick comes back. So during 0 Hour, they start bringing back the JLA. So 0 Hour is its own thing, but they killed some of the JLA. They brought some JLA back from the past, whatever. It was 0 Hour was a soft reboot. It's also where Batman becomes more. He's not out in public anymore.
Yeah.
She was a 6-year-old and about to graduate kindergarten. Like me.
Kids.
Sorry, commercial break. What the heck was I talking about? Flash family.
Yes.
Family. So Jay becomes part of that Flash family as a mentor to Wally because Barry's not there anymore. And this is where Jay's character really grows, is kind of being like the father of the DC universe.
Yeah.
That heart, that like, hey buddy, you're going to get it. You're going to understand. You're going to make your own path. You're going to make your own destiny. But they also introduced another character. I love this character. And
I know you do.
We got him. We got him a little bit, at the very end of the Flash show.
For like 2 seconds.
For 2 seconds. But they introduced a character, Max Mercury. So Max Mercury was like an old, ancient Native American that tapped in. He had some type of, I can't remember his Native American name, but he is the first individual that tapped into the Speed Force. But the problem with Max and his speed that he got, I don't even remember how he got it. I'm so sorry. I'll do better.
No, you're fine.
But the problem with Max is that every time he uses his speed and taps in that Speed Force, he jumps through time. So Max is never in the same time, like that he wants to be. But he kept jumping.
Quantum leap with the Speed Force.
He kept jumping forward through time, and that's why, like some pictures, that's why Max would be an amazing miniseries of just seeing Max in different times.
Yeah.
And whatever. So basically, as Wally's running and getting, because Wally's like the lightning rod for the Speed Force. Wally can tap into the Speed Force like no other. Wally's the fastest Flash.
Yes.
So
I think so.
As you can see, I love Wally because I'm talking with my hands. I'm so passionate.
Go for it.
So as Max runs and Wally was gaining his powers, Max needed to find Wally. So as soon as Max jumps through time and finds Wally, Max doesn't jump through time anymore. Because he found
the lightning rod.
The lightning rod, the Speed Force.
Nice.
And that's the first time the lightning rod type was worked. Also during this time, we get the return of a JLA character, Johnny Quick. Now Johnny Quick was like an old school 1940s JSA speedster, but Johnny tapped into the Speed Force through an equation, and the equation was the Speed Force. So he would always chant an equation to be able to use super speed. That equation was the Speed Force.
That sounds like
so Johnny Quick's part of it a little bit. Johnny has a daughter who gets speed. Jessie Quick, she gets it by tapping the equation too. Wally even gets more fast. There's a part where Wally loses some speed, and then he uses the equation to get even faster. But you're building that Flash family, but also Wally meets a chick named Linda Park.
And when a man meets a woman,
when a man meets a woman,
and that woman likes that man,
yes,
things happen.
I mean, it's like Dickovich said. You just go to her and say, "I'm a man.
I'm a good man.
You're a good woman."
Mm-hmm. That's how I asked Shania. I was like,
Linda, I don't know what it is about DC Comics women, but everybody has to be a reporter. Linda is a smoking hot, half Korean
TV reporter.
TV reporter, yes. And that's the first time that the term lightning rod is used in Flash Comics. Barry with Iris, it's a Wally thing. Because as Wally's powers get more crazy and he gets faster and faster and faster, he gains the ability to be able to transfer speed to objects. He gets the ability to throw lightning. He gets the ability to make weapons out of lightning.
Which are all things that
which are freaking awesome.
They've used for others, for Barry.
But Wally also gets one key villain that's so good that they screwed up in the Flash show. Who do you think that villain is there, Tyler?
Zoom?
No. Well, that comes later.
I was like,
Savitar.
Oh, I was like, yeah. I'm just, yeah. It's like, there's the Savitar of the Flash show, and there's the Savitar of the comics.
So did you read that the Savitar comic?
Not yet, but it's on my...
Oh, it's coming as you read your Wade.
Because I'm interested in not rushing through this.
Yeah, don't rush, dude. Don't rush. Don't speed.
I just finished season 3 of The Flash with Savitar, and I think there was an idea there that they just poorly executed. But we're not going into all that. But the idea
briefly, what Savitar is
speed cult.
It's just a speed cult. I won't get into it because his followers are nuts.
Yeah, they are.
But great story. But the first story that really hits hard, other than Savitar is pretty good. I'm probably getting these stories out of order.
Yeah.
One of the best Flash stories you need to read, man, and I think it is before the Savitar story, is The Return of Barry Allen. Have you read that yet?
The Return of Barry Allen?
Yeah. That's like the first, oh my gosh, Wally story. So in that story, I won't spoil it for you because it's so good. Should I spoil it for you?
Yeah.
I probably should. It's been out like 30 years. So in that story, Barry comes back. Barry comes back. He's like, hey man, I came out of the Speed Force. I'm alive. I'm well. Iris, what's up? How you doing? But he starts acting a little weird. He starts being a little bit more aggressive in things. And basically it's revealed that it's the Reverse Flash. And he altered his appearance as to be Barry to kind of like manipulate and steal some of the Speed Force and basically steal Barry's life. So you're the start of the Reverse Flash kind of wanting to take Barry, like that's not. But also, I think in that story, Barry shows up. The real Barry shows up, and he reveals to Wally that I will see you 3 times in your life when you're in your darkest moment. I will come from the future before Crisis and see you like 3 times, and these will be your darkest moments of your life, and I will be there. So yeah. So keep in mind, Iris is gone during this time too. That's another important thing. But she comes back when Bart comes back. So Bart Allen is your 4th Flash for a brief time, but it's crazy. That's a whole weird thing.
Yeah.
But
he's
in the future, Bart Allen comes and he's Impulse. And he has speed. He is Barry Allen's grandson. And he's Wally's nephew.
Yep.
One thing that always bothered me is that Wally wants nothing to do with Bart.
That does bother me.
Like he like in the comic, like Jay brings it up, Max brings it up, Linda brings it up. He wants nothing to do with Barry or with Bart because Bart reminds him of himself. See, Bart's very impulsive. Hence the name. Yeah, right. Bart just jumps into things and does stuff. And when Wally sees Bart, it reminds him of his younger self working with Barry. And so he sees that relationship with Barry, and he's reminded of that pain, of that loss of Barry. And that's Barry's grandson. So it reminds him of that pain. So he pushes him away, like all the time. So when you see, I think it's even in, they bring it up a bit in Rebirth. When Barry comes back, it's brought up again, because Barry's not spending time with the family. That's that's in the future. But Bart is shunned. He's like shunned by. He's just shunned by Wally, and he's dumped off on Max Mercury. So in the Impulse comic, Max Mercury raises Bart. Now Bart was raised in virtual reality, because he aged so fast. His parents didn't know what to do, so they put him in virtual reality, and he grows up like 15 years of his life just in virtual reality simulation to learn things. Then they send him back to the past. So Bart actually has a clone as well. He has his version of Reverse Flash,
and that's Inertia,
is Inertia, which I think is he's a very unused.
Yeah, because I didn't even know about it. So you and I were starting to crack open some of these stories, and you told me about it. And I think you sent me a picture.
Yeah,
He's
so
like
he has a
wearing
great
green,
suit.
yeah.
It looks really good. I thought the Flash show should use Inertia.
Dude, I think the Flash show should use Inertia.
Yeah.
And I think the Flash show should use Daniel West. Like, my pitch about...
I don't know much about Daniel West yet.
But to bring it up real quick, and after Crisis, they should have added the character of Daniel West, and it should have been Joe's brother.
Well, in New 52, Daniel West was the
Iris'
guy that got arrested?
Yeah, is Iris' brother.
Okay.
But because the way that they structured the TV show, it should have been Joe's brother. And all of a sudden you have Joe the cop, the perfect good man, then his younger brother, criminal. He should have been a whole new character that was created because of Crisis. And then all of a sudden you have this new dynamic in the West House
That
and
would be
everything.
good.
Like,
That would be good.
and you'll read it in the New 52. He's a good character. It's interesting. It's one of the better parts of the New 52 run.
Okay.
Is the Daniel West stuff, because I thought it was interesting that, and you'll understand more of what I'm thinking once you read. But I think,
I'll get there.
Yeah, that was another character I was very surprised that they didn't pull from the comics at all, or try to do anything with. But Inertia would have been cool, because Inertia would have been a much better choice than Godspeed, because you're not there yet. Godspeed is a really good character that I like, having just reread all of the Rebirth Flash.
Sure, yeah.
And the storyline that they gave him on the TV show, not his storyline, would have made more sense with Inertia.
See, Inertia is interesting because Inertia can't age. Inertia is permanently stuck as a 16-year-old dude, clone of Bart, and he needs the Speed Force to stay alive.
What would have been interesting is you make him on the show, because you think about who they cast as Bart. He looks young. Make Inertia almost a kid, like 13. Make him like, so there looks like there's been time.
Yeah.
To where him and Bart have been at this for a while, and he's even more angry because he looks like this innocent child, but really he's the most menacing character there is.
That would be interesting.
Oh, look at us being smart.
Look at us.
But okay.
So Impulse. I like the character Impulse, but I feel around 2005, like 10 years after he's around, Bart gets shot in the knee, and in Teen Titans, Bart gets shot in the knee, or no, maybe that does happen when he's Kid Flash on it. But it's basically, no, I think it's during Infinite Crisis. Basically, Bart is sick of making mistakes. He's sick of being looked at as like he's a moron. He brings nothing to the table. He's stupid. And Bart goes to like San Francisco Library, and I think he's injured. Something happens. He's really injured, or he makes a grave mistake. I'm trying to remember. I'm so sorry.
It's
but
an open discussion.
He reads the whole library.
Dude, it's 80 some years of comics. We're just kind of cracking in like an hour and a half discussion. Okay,
right. But Bart gets all this scientific intelligence and all this book smart, and then he takes the costume Kid Flash, and he becomes, in my opinion, a better Kid Flash than Wally.
So what you're saying is Wally's the best Flash and Bart's the best Kid Flash.
Yeah, I really feel that.
I can't argue with that. I think there's definitely a great story there.
Like you gotta read Jeff Johns' Teen Titans.
I read some because but it's on my.
When he leaves the book, it goes to hell.
It's on my list of just where I'm just reading things straight, because I think after the Flash, I'm gonna take a break and go dig hard on Green Lantern.
Go what?
Go dig into Green Lantern hardcore and just read Green Lantern's whole run from.
John's Green Lantern.
You just start.
Yeah. Cool. You would not be disappointed.
I've read a lot of it, but not straight. You know what I'm saying? So.
That's one other story. So, okay. So now,
Bart's Kid Flash.
Bart's Kid Flash. He's doing his thing. Enter Jeff Johns taking over Wally West. So, after Mark Waid leaves, there's a few years where things are really weird. Even towards the end of Mark Waid's run, it's really weird. But Mark Waid ends his story with the wedding of Wally
And Linda.
And Linda.
Good place to end it.
Now, there's like a little bit of reverse Flash story in there too. Like Reverse Flash kind of goes and kind of like kills Linda. I think he goes after and goes to kill Linda. I apologize. And
It all gets very mucky after a while.
I'm trying to.
It's some of the same stuff repeated, and certain characters are over.
Yeah.
And certain beats are just copied. Because that's like what I found in some of my research.
I know that it ends with the wedding of him and Linda. I know that's how it ends. So when Jeff takes over, it's an interesting time for Wally. Like he introduces Cicada. Cicada gets introduced.
Cicada?
But then, he starts his first or Cicada, whatever.
Cicada.
But the first Wally story is him stuck in Mirror World.
Dude, I hate
And it's
Mirror
really
Master.
weird.
I hate Mirror Master.
And
And
I know you hate Mirror Master.
Solomon loves Mirror Master.
I don't
It's the
hate Mirror
one
Master.
Flash rogue that I don't like. And what you said earlier, and I meant to comment on this, is very true. That when you hand a mantle to a character,
Yeah.
they should inherit the villains because you have a whole new storyline of how does Wally interact with
Yes.
Snart compared to Barry. Because now it's like he has to rebuild this respect. How does Wally deal with them?
Well, DC
even though he was Kid Flash, it's like now he is the one and only.
I think that's the story that should have happened.
that is
and-
just wrong
And
to a
Kyle
character.
got a little bit of these moments where like, oh, you're the new Green Lantern, or you're not the Green Lantern I know. Like he got that with Mongol.
And you kind of got that some
like-
later with Dick Grayson as Batman,
Yeah.
where they're like, I know you're not him, but
Like
you
Joker.
are. So
Like Joker say, you're not my Batman.
yeah,
You're not my man.
and that's a good story.
Yeah, but you're right. Like Wally got cheated a bit. The Cobalt Blue story is also a Wally story, but you kind of have to read it on your own.
Yeah, we don't need to dig into that. I'm kind of tired of hearing that term right now after our conversation.
Yeah, but Jeff puts him in Mirror World, which I hated. And there's like some person in Mirror. I didn't like that. The Cicada, probably saying it wrong. Cicada. That story wasn't bad at all. I didn't mind it. But what Jeff builds is he introduces a character named Hunter Zolomon. And Hunter Zolomon's story is so good.
Yeah,
this is where Jeff really picks up. And
We
Jeff
talked
also,
about Hunter Zolomon a lot in the previous episode.
Oh, my apologies.
No, I'm just saying because I did a whole breakdown of
Zoom.
Zolomon versus Thawne
Yeah.
because I understand why. I love Hunter Zolomon's story, and you'll love it and respect so much more when you read Rebirth. Not Jeff Johns' Rebirth, but Rebirth Flash because Williamson does a great job with it.
Can't wait.
But what drives me insane, and this is my retcon.
It's Professor Zoom and then Zoom.
Zoom is Zolomon, Reverse Flash is Thawne. I've completely, in my head, canon, got rid of Professor Zoom. It's
You
gone.
have to do that.
Because I'm tired of the interconnecting. Like, it gets very confusing. And the fact that their costumes are almost identical. And it's back to the same thing we said about Wally and Barry's Flash. Is you have distinctions because Zolomon's is the same as Wally's, but then you have artists who change things or do their own tweak where it gets muddy. And that's one thing that I love that the Flash TV series did was make Zoom / Zolomon like this dark blue black
Looks great.
and just scary. They gave him his own
Freaking
identity.
serial killer.
I loved it. Like they gave him his own identity, so he wasn't like, oh, it's
Even
just.
though it was a copycat of season 1.
But I love season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, we the Hunter Zolomon we broke down. That is a good story. Like Wally needed his own
Reverse Flash. I mean, you even talked about Impulse having inertia. Like, it's a
you
theme.
need your own Reverse Flash.
Yeah.
You do. And so, also Jeff Johns introduces. I like side characters that work. So Jeff introduced 2 cops and this old cop, and there's like this whole side story with like, is this baby Wally's, and it's really Weather Wizard's baby. There's like this whole thing where like Linda thinks like Wally has a secret kid. That was kind of weird. That story's just thrown to the side. It was like Weather Wizard's baby, and it's just thrown to the side. I don't know what the point of that was. I just read this recently, so that's why it's fresh. but also, so Jeff introduces Hunter Zolomon, who is a member of the police force, was married to a woman named Ashley. Hunter adored her father, or adored his father-in-law. But on one mission, Hunter is a criminal profiler. Mm-hmm. He's a metahuman profiler, and so is Ashley. Ashley is the meta profiler. Hunter is just a regular profiler. And Hunter says to Ashley and her dad, they go to stop this like hostage situation, and Hunter says, "This guy will not have a gun under any circumstances whatsoever. It won't happen. No way." Well, he had a gun. The dude kills Ashley's dad, shoots Hunter in the legs. I think that's where. No, where does that come later? No, I'm so sorry. That comes later. My apologies. He shoots Ashley's dad, and Ashley pretty much like divorces Hunter and just leaves him. And so Hunter's career kind of like goes on the tube. His marriage goes on the tube, and he becomes part of Team Flash, if you will.
He moves the Keystone.
And the Keystone. Also, this part, Wally's a mechanic. I really like that part. I like that mechanic for the police.
So I do like that because I like that it's a little bit more blue collar-ish than like a scientist, even though he has an engineer's brain.
Yeah,
is what they say. Because in the more recent, like I am completely caught up with the Flash from where I read from New 52 through Rebirth through all the way up to where he is now, and I read all like the side Wally stories and stuff.
War, you read all that. Okay, cool.
And like so, what I appreciate is like Wally got a job where he felt very like, I'm out of place here. And Curtis Holt hired him to work for him. And it's like, you have an engineer's brain and you see things and think of things differently, and that's what I need. Even though like you don't have the kind of degree level of these scientists, the way that you look at things and break it down, which I appreciate because I think it shows that you can have talent for something that can help other people without being you don't have a degree in this, or you don't have the years experience, you're not really a real scientist, but yet he is a mechanical thinker. So
what Wade did, because during this time, so Wally was public with his identity.
Always stupid decision.
Yeah, we'll get there. So Wally was public with his identity, even still wore the mask, which was kind of weird. But whatever, he was public with his identity, and they're like, well, how's he going to make money? So Wade made him win the lottery, and he was just a multimillionaire, won the lottery, and that's how, and then he could just be the Flash the whole time. He didn't have to worry about his job. And then that's how he could afford all his speed. I was just like, okay, Wade.
All right, I just don't like when I don't like when superheroes like have money. It works for some superheroes because then you have to dive into what they do with it. Yeah. Like it works great for Batman and for Green Arrow because they both do different things
because
with it.
Because it was that way from the start.
Yeah, it was that way from the start. They do different things with it. But when you start making like, oh, they own their own companies and they're super smart at everything, you're like, okay. I like when it's like,
whatever.
I'm broke. I can't pay my bills. But I'm still going to go out here and risk my life and save people.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, I can identify with you.
So Hunter Zolomon, he helps Wally on a case, and he gets attacked by Gorilla Grodd, and Gorilla Grodd crushes his freaking.
What do you think about Grodd? Period, as a character.
Freaking love Gorilla Grodd.
I have a love-hate with Grodd Because I love it in one breath, I'm like, this is cool. Another breath, I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, it's weird. Like, I love Grodd, but at the same time, sometimes I'm just like, can we do something else? But, I don't know. It's just
I love Grodd because I think he's a little underappreciated.
You identify as a gorilla.
Yeah, I freaking love that. But I mean, you have the bronze of being a freaking gorilla.
Yeah. A
giant gorilla. And then you have the fact that he can control your mind. I think he's a little underutilized at times. Just my opinion. Yeah. He's always, I mean, so far, pre New 52, pre Flashpoint, he's always been like a 1 or 2 issue character.
Yeah.
He's never been like a huge threat, but he should be a huge ass threat.
Now, okay, one thing I wanted to ask you real quick before we wrap up everything. Did they do anything special when Bart was Flash for his suit?
With what?
With Bart, when he was the Flash, like his suit. Is it just like the same as Barry's?
It looks very Wall-E-ish.
Because I've seen some images where they're like, this is Bart as the Flash. And I don't remember anything visually positive.
It was very, it looked like Ezra's does in the movie. It's with like the flat red. So Hunter asked the Flash to go back in time. He asked Wally to go back in time because Wally's the Flash that actually can go back in time and not screw stuff up.
Now, Wally uses the cosmic treadmill, right?
Barry would use the cosmic treadmill. Wally would need to.
Okay, and that comes down to because my question is, do you like the cosmic treadmill?
I think it makes sense to be able to pinpoint where you're going to go, but it makes sense to get to a spot. It doesn't make sense to get back.
And
does it go with you? It doesn't always go with you.
And that's kind of like my thought, because they use the cosmic treadmill on the show, and it pops up in comics and stuff. But then some things have just like the show and other like things that kind of got rid of it. Like, oh, he can do it on his own. Like,
I think in the comics, it's important because the comics shows the differences between the Flash's abilities. But in the movies and the shows, it always brings them all their abilities together from different Flashes.
Because it goes back to that amalgamation.
So, like, for him to use a treadmill, you haven't established that precedent, So Hunter Zolomon asked the Flash to save him. Flash. Okay. So during this, Zoom, as you talked about previously in another episode, Zoom tries to kill the babies and stop them from being born.
Because Zoom's a douche.
In my opinion, that might be the best Jeff Johns. That's the best Jeff Johns Flash story. It's definitely in the top 3 Jeff Johns stories there is.
It's easily his best Wally story.
Without a doubt.
We'll make that simple.
So that moment with Zoom trying to kill the kids, and then he tries to make Wally watch it over and over and over again. Barry intervenes, saves Glenda from getting killed, and the baby's getting killed. Has this great moment with Wally, like, "Hey kid, you're doing a great job, and you're going to be a dad. It's going to be okay." And then Zoom. Well, Zoom's a man out of time. Zoom's powers are all time.
Yeah, it's all time based.
And the look of Zoom with the bug eyes, you know that. Then it's that moment of almost losing his kids that makes Wally take a step back as the Flash. And also around that time, Infinite Crisis happens. Infinite Crisis, Wally and Bart and Max Mercury and Jay, they're all fighting Superboy Prime. They take him into the Speed Force. Wally doesn't come back. He stays in the future Speed Force with Linda, and they raise their kids. That's where that happens. Bart comes back, but Bart's older.
Yeah, I did recently. Yeah, we're gonna do me and Bryan are gonna do a whole Superboy Prime like special in July.
Yeah, we do too. So Bart's older. He's the Flash for a little bit, and then Bart dies, and Wally comes back from the Speed Force around that time, and then that's where you get Jeff Johns' story. My apologies. And then we get Final Crisis. Wally's already thinking about, like, I need to be a father. So storyline wise, and this will go into our Jeff Johns story. Storyline wise, it makes sense for Wally. It makes sense for Wally to take a step back as Flash, to be a father.
Yeah, it does.
He almost lost his kids. It makes sense. So at the end of Flash show, for Barry to be like, I don't want to be the Flash anymore, that would have been amazing. That would have been a more perfect ending.
What? Oh yeah, that's right. Me and Bryan in this conversation probably pitched a better idea for the Flash finale than anything else. But no, that would have been just the last moment. The last moment, Barry's holding Nora. Wally shows up, and Barry steps.
If he would have went to Malcolm or whatever the hell his name was, Eddie, and been like,
Malcolm
Eddie, you're right. Why don't you be the Flash now? Or something like whatever. You like him passing the mantle to a new Flash instead of just, oh hey, I could do this all along, but here's my powers, here's my powers, here's my powers. Like if he would have, if there would have been an emotional finale where he says, I can't be the Flash anymore. I want to be a father. That would have been more powerful. So for Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison to bring back Barry at this time, it makes sense story-wise. And I feel from that moment it doesn't hurt Wally. It doesn't at that time. At that moment it doesn't.
At that moment it doesn't.
Because Wally, his kids are nuts. Like one could, Jay can move his size.
He has like strength in her, and then
and then
Irie, she has speed.
But there's an awesome story where her age is out of control. That's a pretty good story.
But and the other thing is,
it made sense to bring back Barry.
I can see that, and I think in that context with Barry, it's probably the only one that really did make sense.
Yes, that's where Rebirth makes sense to bring back Barry,
because I feel like,
and how needed Barry in The Blackest Night.
So much Jeff Johns was about resetting things back, bringing back my Green Lantern, my Flash, trying to recalibrate Superman to being, because his history with Donner, making Superman more Donner-ish. That was kind of Jeff Johns'.
It was good.
So
it was good. Right? No, man.
I mean, he's a great writer, but there's things like I have a love-hate with Secret Origins.
Well,
that's a whole other thing. It's
a whole other story, because the 90s, it started strong, but Wally was in a place where he could stop being Flash. Mm-hmm. Kyle was not in a place where he could stop being Green Lantern.
Kyle didn't need to stop being Green Lantern. Kyle could have kept going and needed to. Because it needed to cement Kyle's important. Because I really feel like if you weren't reading comics in the 90s, you're like, Kyle who? Yeah. Kyle what?
Right.
Because he's never really been...
Kyle, some shit.
Yeah, because Kyle's never really been utilized. Because even on Superman, the animated series, when they brought Kyle in, he was an amalgam. Yeah. He was a Hal Jordan, Kyle amalgam.
Yep. Kyle never got respect.
He didn't.
And and at that part where Hal comes back, it's Kyle. It's a part where Kyle really he has to get over kind of the death of Jade.
Yeah.
It's Kyle just became Ion. He had all that power.
You've just inspired me, Bryan.
Huh?
Next year, 2024, for March, because that's St. Patrick's Day, which is green. We are just going to do an entire month of Green Lantern conversations and discussions.
I don't know if I can handle it. So Barry comes back, I think the Flash Rebirth story is really amazing.
I think it's really good.
It's a huge retcon of Barry because before then there was never talk of his parents or his mom getting murdered, but it cemented Thawne as the greatest DC villain there is. Yeah, I said it here. I think Thawne's better than Joker.
I think he is
because of his pettiness.
Because he really ties with an origin of a character better than even when they try to do like Burton's Batman. I will say, and we get into this in another episode, so we won't go into it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this now. Reading Rebirth, and then when Rebirth ends, reading Flashpoint really work as this nice two-parter.
Yes.
Like, even though they don't, even though there's some story that happens in between the two.
Well, that story in between is really Blackest Night. Him being there for Blackest Night.
But I mean, like, just for the...
And then the build-up to Flashpoint of the mirror breaking, him seeing, like, the...
Which is, like, in the brightest day and stuff. Like,
you
could read the build-up, but there's a really strong narrative between those two, like, if you look at them as books. So, all right, Bryan, we're going to wrap it up here.
Right at Flashpoint, where this Flash movie is going to be.
Right. So, that's a whole other episode coming up. So tune in to our episode on Flashpoint for Flash Week.
So here's a special backyard barbecue. Bryan and Ty trying to talk the Flash, being interrupted every 3 seconds, and it's a good time. So enjoy this little tidbit.
So here I am with Tyler Patrick.
What's up, Bryan?
Starting to grill today.
Yeah, we are.
And decided to talk about The Flash since we didn't get the chance to.
Always.
So, the finale of The Flash, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel, buddy?
Okay.
Because you've been watching the first couple seasons.
Yeah.
Like,
so
kind of over.
So I started, Janine and I were preparing for Flash Week, and we watched the pilot, because the pilot kind of really represented a lot for us, just because of, like, when it came out and what took place in our lives and stuff. And then the kids were really getting onto it and enjoying it. So we just started rewatching season 1. And I'm still rewatching season 1 with the kids, but I kept going. And I revisited. I didn't do a complete straight watch. Like, I skipped a couple just because I knew them well.
Did you do what I do and just watch the scenes with Barry?
No, because in the first 3 seasons, he's in it a lot. It's not till really, so my working theory, and I'm going to rewatch season 4 next, is it's right at Crisis that it all goes to poop.
Absolutely.
Because that's when you
when it really goes to poop.
You lose Cisco, like right after. You lose Tom Cavanaugh, who just his acting, no matter what role it is.
Amazing. Freaking amazing.
You can't fill that void. And, you realize, like, I forgot how early Cecile comes into play, but how much I like Cecile, but she's definitely a character that should have never gotten prominence.
And outran a speedster in the finale? Spoiler.
So, just to kind of go to the finale, okay?
Yeah.
First of all, I ran this poll online. Godspeed is an amazing character in the comics.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
And I really feel like Eric Wallace, when he took over, he just kind of looked at what was new in the comics and just took something. The writers for The Flash at first found a way to see what was in the comics throughout the character's history, and then kind of remix it for a show, as you should. I feel like if you do too much of a one-to-one, it's not as exciting. Kind of like, because it's a lot of.
You said Wallace, the new showrunner.
Yeah, he just felt like
horrible.
he just grabbed from the comics, threw it on there, and didn't really. I mean, just from Josh Williamson's run, he did Fast Track. He referenced Avery Ho in the finale. He did Blood Work. He did Godspeed. And then he kind of bastardized a moment in the comics between Barry and Thawne.
You say you bastardized?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to say what, because I really feel like I recently read New 52 to current.
So you didn't even read any of the Justice League?
So...
Like, you didn't read any of that? You just went right into it?
I read just the Flash comics from...
Okay, I thought about that.
The New 52.
Yeah.
Because, I read it before. So, having this comic knowledge, if we look at the final season, The first chunk is the Red Death. It's horrible.
Why even do it?
Why even?
What was
do
the
it?
purpose?
There wasn't,
Like-
because the big part about that is you have the other characters. I understand using Batwoman because that was your Bat character in the Arrowverse. Okay, I'll make peace with that, right? But you didn't even do the Dark Multiverse, and that's the whole point. Now, if you just made this about the Dark Multiverse, and
Oh, it's Oh, whoa.
it's burning.
That's okay. It's burning the stickers on the side of it. But yeah, let's just go with it. You know, like I read an interview where Eric was like, "Yeah, I was kind of mad that I had to focus on burying Iris at the end." And then I read something that he wanted to do Blackest Night.
Yeah,
then he was so rough.
I'm sorry. I don't want you anywhere near any of these properties because you don't know what you're doing.
He does not. No way.
Okay, because I would have really made the last season very focused. Now, I know that Grant got COVID and was out for a little while, which, okay, that still puts him out for like a week worth of production or something. Not, 3 episodes worth where they were filler. Because really, if you look at this final season, it's Red Death, and then it goes into bullshit. And then it goes into the best episode of the season, which one of the
best episodes of the whole show,
which is episode 9. It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to.
Yep.
And that episode, so Janine and I watched that episode, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then we were just chilling, and we watched that together. And then I said, hey, do you want to go ahead and watch the pilot again with me? We'll record our special. And watching that episode and then watching the pilot, that could have been your finale. Because it came full circle, because in the finale, you have in the pilot, you have Oliver telling Barry about wearing a mask, the lightning chose him, and stuff like this, that he echoes in that episode. So it really could have felt like a nice book ending. But then we go into the whole Cobalt Blue,
which is a perfect choice for the finale of The Flash, if you could do it right.
If you could do it right.
Okay, so
shouldn't have even touched the Malcolm Thawne thing because he wasn't Malcolm Thawne. It was just a fake name. Didn't even need that. It should have been Eddie, just Eddie, basically waking up feeling like he just was asleep and he woke up and he's trying to come to grips with where he's at. Okay? Yeah, we shouldn't have had to do this whole I have this other life and all that. No. It should have been like it happened almost like for him it felt like he was instantaneously, if it's the negative Speed Force resurrecting him. Okay? I feel like that would have been a much more impactful story. Now, if you didn't do, but trying to keep our minds to just the finale.
Yeah.
If you had started, like I said, done something where there's this mysterious speedster, or even just the entity.
I'm so sick of speedsters, though.
I am too.
Cobalt Blue was not a speedster in the comics. All he was a dude that would travel through time and try to kill all the Flashes through history. That's all he did.
So if you would have used him...
And stole speed.
If you would have used him,
yeah.
Brought Eddie back, but don't tell us it's Eddie, right? Use Cobalt Blue to where he's traveling through time and he's pulling out the evil speedsters at time.
Yeah.
And he's sending them to fight Barry. So as we're going through the season, Barry's losing people of Team Flash. So like you were saying with Cobalt Blue, if you had started where the Speed Force brought him back, okay, and they brought Eddie, and just had him traveling in time, bringing evil speedsters to fight Barry, killing off Barry's team, and then Barry would defeat them, and then they would return back to their.
That's what we did in the comics. That's all he was doing.
At the end, it comes down to Cobalt Blue versus Barry, and if you wanted to turn him into an evil speedster, he was absorbing the power or something, to be a speedster, it wasn't natural, he was trying to absorb it or something.
Well, Thawne even made a comment all you guys would just imitate me. That's all you do.
Yeah. And so, in the last episode when you have Eddie fighting Barry, it's kind of weird because Thawne's there and you're like, okay. I hated, XS versus Savitar. That's kind of neat. Okay.
That could have been awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's a version of her dad.
Yeah.
You could have had the really emotional thing there.
That's why putting them all in the last episode just at the start sucked.
Yep.
Instead of putting the last 2 episodes Because I would have, if you're going to do this 13 episodes, you can make the story work for 13 episodes.
Absolutely.
You have because you have an evil speedster show up. Barry has to fight them, and then they're like, "What is going on?" And then you build it, and then you do one episode that's just a complete flashback about what happened to Eddie when he came back, what he went through, and then the last 2 episodes is this big speed battle, like one giant movie. Like you said, Excess versus Savitar would have been a great psychological battle.
Absolutely.
The whole, just using Nora, but putting a blonde wig on her to be like, that would have been Eddie's daughter with Iris. Stupid.
Oh God. She would look nothing like her.
I love the actress that plays Nora. I think everyone on the show has better chemistry with her than they do with Candace.
Oh, Iris, yeah.
Yeah. She would have been my casting for Iris. Because I could see, just the chemistry between actors.
Yeah, you're right. She was more warm and fun.
And I love, she was great fighting Savitar, but that was over way too fast. But then you can rationalize that it really wasn't, the real evil speedster, because technically he's dead, so it was just Cobalt Blue bringing them, evil... what do you want to say? Just the negative Speed Force creating imitations of these speedsters. They're not actually the actual speedster or whatever.
But then, okay. So then you have the voice of the negative Speed Force talking through this Cobalt gem.
Yeah.
Where did the gem come from? Who created it?
Why is it a blue gem?
Why is it blue?
And the lightning is red. It would have been a red gem.
Yep.
And why did he just say my name's Cobalt Blue? Why?
So who's the voice? Who's really behind it? And then to solve it, hey, can we just work together? Handshake, boom, done.
Yes. It ain't always gonna be easy.
Done.
So
and Barry's so overpowered.
That's the thing.
By this time,
Barry should be overpowered. That's why he should be Barry alone, having to fight 4 evil speedsters, but not evil speedsters brought out, but pulled from their time. Them at their prime showing up. That's what it should have been. Don't even get me started on how fracking stupid the whole Virtue Cecile thing was. All of a sudden that bitch is flying and doing but that made me mad.
Okay, Cecile can't fly.
No.
And it's Godspeed. It's Godspeed.
What is she's using emotion? Happiness lifts her up?
And where the fuck was Bart?
Why
wasn't Bart facing Godspeed?
Thank you. Why is this whole... If they had done something where there was a ticking clock because they had done something in the past to where Nora is being Back to the Futurized, where she's starting to disappear from the timeline.
Yeah.
And there's this ticking clock about why it's so important that they're about to give birth to Nora as if she's not going to be born. That'd been so great. But they try to build this tension Nora's coming. And looking back, that was one of Eric Wallace's big things. It felt like he was forcing Nora throughout time.
Because he's a side character guy.
And I'm Dawn... bringing that name back would have been awesome instead of making her Nora. Because I hate when characters name their children after their parents. Just saying. I hate it. I do. It's confusing as hell.
Well, speaking of births, the birth of Nora...
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just...
And then she holds herself as a baby.
That was weird, but...
that's not time...
Well, I thought about that, okay? But if you go back, it's sound in their logic. Because if you think about it, in the pilot episode, Barry grabs young Barry and takes him out of the house to protect him.
He does.
So we've already established that you can touch yourself in the past. It doesn't time cop it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch
touch yourself in the past, yeah.
Did you ever watch Time Cop?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know when the bad guy touches his younger self and he just...
With Snipes, right? It was Snipes and...
It was Jean-Claude Van Damme.
No, I didn't see that one. I saw Demolition Man.
So in Time Cop, the rule is matter cannot occupy the same space. So if you were to find your other self in the past, you're the exact same matter. So if you were to touch, you would cancel each other out and cease to exist. That was Nora's big thing. Cool. But like you said, no Bart. There was not even a mention of Bart to the last episode where she mentions Bart's birth. How cool would it have been if Nora and Bart had just ended up being twins at the end?
Yeah, I thought they were supposed to be twins. I thought that was the whole thing.
Because originally, remember, I made the joke to you before, after Crisis, every superhero got 2 kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was Nora's journey. Then Cecile's was stupid with Godspeed. That was bullshit. And then the whole Allegra, like, taking out
I thought
Thawne.
Chuck was dead.
Chuck should have been dead.
I was rejoicing.
Chuck should have been dead. There needed to be consequences and
hell yeah.
stakes.
No
That's
stakes.
what I'm saying. There was
I
no
felt like
st-
I was watching a Marvel movie.
Yeah, there was no stakes. Everyone's going to live, okay? So that was stupid. They took out Thawne, like, the biggest threat that we've had in the entire series run. It was whatever. Or Allegra should have died stopping Thawne, and her and Chuck should have died together, like Romeo
Barry
and
should die
Juliet.
in Crisis.
That I still go back and forth with that, but that's because if Barry, I mean, I think they did a good job of closing the loop of John Wesley Shipp, letting him die in Crisis, and Barry living with that and going forward.
So that Jay could be, so he could be Jay Garrick.
But then never doing anything else after Crisis that was really great is what sucked. So we did all that. Zoom,
Final team.
and then Zoom is my favorite evil speedster because I love what they did with Zoom on the show. Plus, I got to meet Teddy Sears, and he was a really cool guy to talk to.
He is very cool. I met him.
And I just felt like he was great as as an actor, like bringing the fake Jay, the Zoom, and then like all the different ways he played the character. And
But it was the same thing that Reverse Flash did.
yeah, it's hilarious. That's why I think it
But
works.
it was so good.
But then he just went out like a punk. And I mean, you go back to season 2 when he like kills everybody in the police precinct. And then this Zoom just gets punked.
I'm sorry. This ending, this season ending should have been dark.
It should have been dark. It should have been Barry, and then it should have been really Barry stretching himself and having to go. And then what was I was kind of like, Zoom went out like a punk. And then it should have been Barry on his own versus all the evil speedsters.
Is that timer for 4 minutes?
And my question to you, Brian, what was the resolution? What made this feel like a season finale or series finale?
Oh, Nora's born, and then he gives his powers to other people. So if he could give his powers to people the whole time, the whole time, I'm like Sally Field and Miss Duffer, the whole time. Well, why the hell didn't he just give everybody speed?
Well, I think it's because
Like, what was the purpose?
He had to.
Max Mercury, I was appreciative.
He leveled up and he gave it to the Speed Force. Basically, it was about throwing the lightning bolt to choose the speedsters. He didn't choose them himself. He talked about having to share this power outside the family.
He could not the whole time.
And I'm just like, he could have, but just like the whole idea, like the lightning chose him. Like the idea was the lightning chose more speedsters to represent. But the only thing that brings any kind of closed circuit to the series is that now that him and the negative Speed Force are going to work together to be a balanced of equation. Instead of being at war with each other, the avatar of the negative Speed Force will work with him. And then Eddie just disappears.
Yeah, but so who cares?
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything.
Because the whole point was Thawne was the negative, and he just wanted to fight Barry. So, I don't know. I mean, it didn't feel like a series finale.
Not at all.
There was Supergirl didn't feel like a series finale. Black Lightning kind of did. Arrow, of course, did. Because Oliver was dead.
Yep.
But I don't know, man. It felt like you could keep going. And the inclusion at the end of Max Mercury, Avery Ho, which that one excited me because I had just finished reading, Williamson's run.
What was the deal with the different Jesse Quick?
It's not Jesse Quick. It's Jess Chambers, who is the Flash in Future State. She's a future version of the Flash.
No, Jesse Chambers is Jesse Quick.
Not this version. It's the Future State version where she's
Brian, you went way farther than me.
What'd she say?
she's a non-binary
No, what'd she
modern
say?
day character.
What?
So yeah, you have to read Future State to really get that character's story, and it's weird, if I remember all of it right. So I mean, it just was like, okay, this is the end, and I'm not happy. I pitched you my ending, where Barry was fighting Eddie, and basically Eddie corrupts the forces, and it restores the original timeline. He goes back to what should have been. And then at the very end, we see a red streak running, and basically the idea that the show was just some sort of closed loop or a chapter, and that it's kind of rebooting again, something like that. I don't know. But I was not happy with the finale of The Flash, basically because nothing made sense. Like, it really was just like, we're going to throw a bunch of spaghetti on the wall.
Everything was so rushed the past couple of years. Everything. The Red Death, the whole purpose. Like, I kind of felt like getting Caitlin back was kind of like a sorry fans, we screwed up moment.
The Keown story, the way that, like...
It didn't make sense. Was she the entity?
She was like the entity, like the whole I'm a goddess thing. Like,
but was she the entity?
I don't... Like, it would have made so much...
You know what I mean?
Like, she was the entity possessing Caitlin, basically.
Yeah, like the entity of life.
Yeah.
Like black, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they had taken their time, like, to me, that feels like a storyline that needed more time that you don't throw into the final season of the series. You let that storyline go. You know, you don't try to force this in at the last season because that takes away time from the characters that you really wanted to work with.
And honestly, okay, honestly, what would have worked great is that if they would have moved that Death Storm to the end. So, okay, if they would have ended on Blackest Night, Caitlin's ending should have been getting Robbie back. And it should have been Keown, like, being the entity, was able to purify Robbie and get her Robbie.
That's why, like, my thought about, like, just somehow Barry fixes it and takes them back to the original timeline to where everyone kind of has their happy ending.
You know what I forgot?
And
I forgot that he dated Linda Park. He dated Wally West's woman.
It wasn't Linda Park. It was a different Park. So I looked it up.
It was Linda Park.
Linda Park's mentioned, and then it's like Victoria Park or something.
You sure?
Yeah, it was weird.
It was Linda Park.
Because I looked through the credits as I was rewatching stuff.
Patty, it should have been Patty.
It should have been Patty. He had more chemistry with Patty than anybody. But I was going to say one more thing. I can't remember.
You know, when I started started recording, I just thought we would be able to get through it.
Yeah, we did it.
There's just too much going on.
I'm not happy with the Flash's ending because I don't feel like they really wanted to end with the Flash. They really screwed up so many characters. They gave more time to characters that we didn't really care about, that were forced on us, than characters that really came naturally and enjoyed the show. I mean, I'll take some, like, you for a long time said, and you and I both did, they would have done something after Crisis that brought in, like, Wally West. Because slowly they start saying Wallace more, just like in the comics where
So that one's good.
This version of Wally was really Wallace Ace West.
Yeah, why didn't Wallace come back at the end?
He came back for episode 9, that was it. Like, how awesome would it have been if the evil speedsters knew how to steal speed and they stole Wally's speed and he was helpless. And that was it. That's why episode 9 should have been the finale. That's all I gotta say about that. Brian, final thoughts.
Oh, it sucked. And I'm too distracted right now to think about it.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough Super Talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, the Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our reports.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.